Hi everybody, a really warm welcome to the channel Nelly the Narcissist, or a big welcome back. Today I want to look at this subject that was inspired by a subscriber, and I felt that it was a very important topic to discuss with you. Now, one of the subscribers here raised the point of, well, we have to admit that we saw the signs. There were red flags that were raised, and for whatever reason, we ignored them. So there becomes a debate of how much responsibility is ours versus how much of a victim we were. And for any survivor of narcissistic abuse that really wants to heal and doesn't want to ever find themselves in another narcissistic relationship ever again, naturally, they want to be actively engaged in taking some kind of responsibility. Because I think for some survivors, they think, well, if we don't take any responsibility, then doesn't it seem then like we don't get a choice or a say over what happens to us? So I would like to go further into this debate with you today because I think it could be really helpful. And if you listen to this video all the way through, I'd like to encourage you to develop your own position and your own stance, because I feel like everyone will have a slightly different standpoint, but I believe that many survivors will come to probably the same conclusion as I have myself. So if you're feeling confused in any way about this, I'm hoping that this video is going to give you a chance for some clarity and for some understanding. Just before I get into this topic, if you like the content, if you appreciate the content, then please do like this video, share with whoever you think would benefit from hearing it, and also comment your thoughts down below. And if you aren't subscribed, then please do consider subscribing. Thank you. So getting back to this question, how much responsibility do we have and should we take for what happened to us in the narcissistically abusive relationship? I think if we take too much responsibility, if there is such a thing, then we can get really angry with ourselves and we can forget that we were also a victim in most cases to a pretty slick hustler, con artist, predatory manipulator that's really good at what they do, that's highly convincing in their acting. If you knew nothing about NPD, I think if you're prone to ruminating on the past and getting angry about seeing the signs but allowing the relationship to continue, then you do need to give yourself a certain amount of forgiveness, because nobody's prepared for a narcissist or a narcissistic psychopath. Nobody. Even though you would have got red flags and signs and you would have felt inside yourself, in your intuition, that you weren't in a healthy condition within that relationship, whatever that was, the nature of narcissistic abuse is so insidious and it's designed to be blinding. You've probably heard of the narcissistic fog. And if you've been in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, you'll know just how confused and off balance you were on a daily basis with them. And they do many, many techniques that are designed to keep you in that state so you don't see clearly and you don't wake up. These are very clever manipulators. And then when we look at this in terms of our responsibility, I think looking back, we can all see distinct moments when the abuse became clear to us, or when we figured out, someone was taking us for a ride, or when the toxicity became, apparent. And yet we allowed it to continue. And it's those parts that stay in your mind long after. And you ask yourself, well, I knew right then, and I also knew right then. So why didn't I put a stop to it and assert myself and do what was best for me? Well, then you can go on to reflect how when you started to wake up, the narcissist then employed tactics and manipulated you and the situation so that you go back to sleep. Now, this would have been covert, very, very difficult to consciously recognize, but, and this is why it's a nuanced debate, many times we are aware of it because something doesn't feel right. So there's often a choice that we make to ignore our gut instinct and our intuition, because it never lies. And this in itself, by the way, is a spiritual aspect that needs to be discussed. I do believe that we all have a responsibility for our own well-being, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. We can't actually give the power to somebody else because you can't always trust others to look out for you. Some people, as we found out, they don't have your best interests at heart. And so we need to be the ones taking care of ourselves because we can't rely on others to treat us kindly or with respect. So, our own self-protection absolutely is necessary. And that is our responsibility in life. We all get those feelings about people, But different factors can get in the way of us investigating that intuition. Sometimes we actually slam ourselves down. We don't trust ourselves and we say, the person seems to be so lovely in front of us. Stop having those bad feelings about them. They're clearly a lovely person. This is just paranoia. And that's what you can think. Because remember, we haven't been to the University of Narcissists and Narcopaths. So we don't understand how or why a person would appear as one thing and be the total opposite of that on the inside. Like we don't get what is to gain. What is the narcissist logic? We haven't got a clue about narcissistic supply and narcissistic personality disorder. We don't know what their drives are, what their motivations are, because they're very, very different from who we are. So we can't be angry at ourselves or even take responsibility for that part, because literally we're clueless. So we believe the projection. We haven't the first clue that, they're imitating humans and they are involved in relationship simulations that aren't actually proper relationships. Plus, we haven't figured out that they are all massive deceivers, liars, and manipulators. We're looking at them as a human, just like you or I. We don't understand that what they say to you has very, very little meaning and is totally untrue if their actions tell you the opposite. We're still trusting words over actions at this point. And this is extra learning from narcissistic abuse. We now know to trust actions and not words. Some of these people with NPD, especially if you mix it then with psychopathy, and they're also Machiavellian, you got to remember that it was your first time, but it wasn't theirs. And this means that you were unevenly matched to begin with. So you were the one in the dark about their techniques and their tactics. But that game is their nature. They've played it hundreds, possibly thousands of times. They've played it so many times that they've been able to perfect their performance. But for you, you were a complete novice. You didn't know the rules of their game. You were far behind and you were entering the arena wearing a blindfold. Unless you actually know what narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy and the dark triad and tetrad types, you're up against an opponent where you're not armed and you're completely off guard. They're on higher ground. You're very vulnerable. And you fall basically prey to their ambush. So we can't beat ourselves up for something that requires us to have prior knowledge. Personally, I think that the way they took advantage of their power over you in the relationship, because, they knew what they were doing, but you didn't. I think that it does put us in more of a victim position because it's disempowering not to have all the information. When you have all the information, then you know what you're saying yes to, and you know what your choices are. It's very clear, which is why now that you're getting the information and you're gathering the facts, now it's in your hands. If it happens again, you can recognize it for exactly what it is, and you can choose to stay and allow the situation to continue. And then it is, and it will become a much larger degree your responsibility because you have more awareness of exactly what's happening to you. When I look back on my own story, and sometimes I do feel angry, it's normal, it's part of the healing process. There's a feeling of anger for allowing somebody to do to you all these terrible things, to allow yourself to get so badly injured and not put a stop to it. You can ruminate and get stuck on the rumination of all the things that you should have done a lot sooner. And I had friends telling me, you have to stop this relationship. Can't you see what's happening? And I think that I could, and I just didn't want to. And, the reason for this was love. Blinded by love, and carrying hope. I was deeply in love. I was convinced that the narcissist loved me too, and that we had some kind of a special connection. The trauma bond basically had already been very well established before the real warning signs started going off. Plus, being an empath like myself, you're going to really struggle if you're an empath to give up on love. You think that love conquers all. And so you try to help the ones that you love, and you're fiercely loyal to them, even to toxic relationships. And, being fiercely loyal can be virtues, but of course we're thinking that we're dealing with a person wired like us. Nobody said they're a narcissist, they don't love you because they have no empathy, they feel no love. or connection. They just go around using and exploiting people for what they can get out of it. So you don't know that you're trying to fight for a relationship and a person that doesn't really exist. You're trying to be a champion for a lost cause because your love can't help them, and they don't care about your love either. They've got no respect for you. Trying to love them will cost you your own destruction. Nobody told us this. Nobody gave us the information that we needed. And because of that, we held on, we held out for hope. We believed things could get better and change. And many times this would have been enforced then by the narcissist. I mean, I kept screenshots of conversations and text messages from the malignant narcissist, the psychopathic narcissist. And if you read them, they convey so much love. They seem so authentic. There's mind-bending to kind of recognize that that was all fake. They were absolute lies. In the position now, when you look back and you can read those things, you can see it was absolute emotional manipulation. And surprisingly enough, the love and the attention started getting poured onto me every time the narcissist wanted something, or every time the narcissist felt like they were losing control. But what seems obvious to you now, because you have the information, looking back, at the time, it wasn't obvious. The narcissist and the narcissistic psychopaths, they're very, very good at deceiving. They hide it very well. They conceal it. They're covert. It's really not your fault that you didn't understand that some people can just be evil. We're not stupid. These are good manipulators. And if you dealt with a narcissist that had psychopathy also, as I mentioned, the dark triad or tetrad, then the level of their cunning and deviousness becomes even more enhanced. And the level of their manipulation is incredibly dark. And I've made a video about coercive control that I really encourage you to go check out. And the link is going to be below. Now, I'm sure coercive control is a tactic that all malignant narcissists use to enslave and entrap you within their hold. And it's like they take possession of you and you become aware as time goes on that a relationship that started off so wonderfully, so beautifully, you thought, it became somehow so sick and you feel like a hostage. And they do call coercive control invisible chains. And again, these are techniques that some narcissists covertly use to take possession of you. These are not simply dysfunctional relationships. These actually take hold of you. They have a grip on you. And we don't know how it happened. And again, this is disempowering. We don't know what they're doing. But they deviously concoct their plans, and these are sinister individuals. These are criminals against humanity. They take people prisoners. You become in a soul prison. And I've made comedy skits about how they love bomb you, and then they literally want to take ownership of your soul. And it's scary, and unless you've been in that situation, you wouldn't understand, as an outsider looking in, why doesn't that person just leave? It seems so simple, but there's nothing simple about it. This is somebody that claimed to care about you, that claimed to love you. And then at the very end, you see exactly how much you meant to them, how little you meant to them. And because it's so painful and it's so devastating and it's totally abnormal, it's abnormal, that behavior and our pain and the loose ends, it causes us to seek answers. We have loose ends. We can't be at peace until we have the answers. But if you're totally naive to narcissistic abuse and you're in a relationship with a narcissist, I realize that it can take a very, very long time to get all the pieces of the puzzle that you need and put them together to give you a clear picture of what's going on and wake you up. And like I said, when you have all the bits of the puzzle, that's when you're empowered. Having the information, getting those pieces empowers you. That's what it does for you. Without them, we're very, very vulnerable and we're victimized. And it is difficult to look back and say, I should have done this and I should have done that. What we can all learn and resolve is what we aren't going to do or allow anyone to do to us ever again in the future. We can't right those wrongs from the past, but we can take the wisdom and make it count for the future. We can also reflect that we all have a very powerful system operating within us that tries its best to speak to us and guide us away from danger. And that's the intuition. And this is the spiritual part of us. And I believe it represents the higher consciousness of a person, of yourself, that's connected to a divine source. Now, whether you believe that or not, it doesn't matter. You still have that guidance system within you that wants to keep you safe, that knows immediately when things are not right with a person and knows if you're in a dangerous situation. It's automatic. It happens. And when you follow your intuition, it leads you perfectly. So we can all go forward by realizing that we never ever want to shut down this inner voice ever again, because we now know what could be the consequences of doing that. We got greater respect for ourselves and for our internal compass, and we resolve that we never ever want to be influenced or swayed by anyone else that causes us to go against our inner voice and inner knowing ever again. And this is all great wisdom to carry forward. This is what encourages you to create a deeper connection with yourself after narcissistic abuse. And if you're an empath especially, you need to have this, because it will save you so much. There are many toxic people that will be drawn to your energy that we need to protect ourselves from. Most of the time when they have the opportunity, narcissists do pick people that are very strong, very steadfast, that have got vast amounts of love. Many are empaths or are highly empathic. And when I look back, I can say that I love to my fullest. I tried my hardest to help somebody else that appeared to be a vulnerable victim, appeared to need help. And in trying to do what was right by them, I sacrificed myself many times to somebody that was not on any level deserving of my energy. And I'd like you to consider the same for yourself. But as we can resolve, we didn't realize at the time that they were undeserving of our love and energy. We didn't realize that everything that we were trying to do for them, or the love that we were trying to pour into them, was in vain. It was just going to a black hole to avoid. But nevertheless, I can honestly say, as I'm sure most of you can, I did my best. And when all the pieces of the puzzle came together and the narcissist became really obviously exploitative, I made the difficult break. Difficult because it's never easy to walk away from all the love and energy that you've invested into somebody and a relationship that you thought that you're in. So was it your fault to have loved and believed in love as you probably did? I think that in itself, it's not wrong. I just believe that we threw pearls to a swine. Sacrifice sometimes in relationships isn't a bad thing if it's for somebody that would do the same for you. But when it's sacrifice that hurts you, then it's self-abandonment, and it's almost like self-harm. And that's why narcissists love empaths and they love rescuers or codependents, because they will encourage you to self-abandon and to self-sacrifice for them. And they will push you to the limit to see how far you're willing to go. And you know them, they will take it all the way, and they'll squeeze you until nothing is left of you to take. And so we do absolutely need to take care of our energy, and that is our responsibility. Nobody else is likely to do that for you. I've said this in previous videos about my greatest lesson from narcissistic abuse as an empath. The fact is, we don't see things how they are, we see things how we are. And that's the issue. When they say that they love and care for us, we believe them. If we're of love and kindness, we tend to see people through that lens of love and kindness. Unless you've gone through narcissistic abuse before, you wouldn't have a clue that people can lie and do terrible things to others just for their own gain. And of course, narcissists love people that are trained to see the good, because they often make all kinds of excuses for the narcissist, as probably many of you did. They're way too understanding, they're way too forgiving and way too tolerant of bad behavior. And we do it because for a long time, we take the narcissist for a regular person that's just like us. We don't see the situation for how it is. I used to see things through loving eyes, even though there was some really shady behavior and things going on, and I felt drained most of the time. I believed the lies that I was sold. And I was really sold the lies. Narcissists are great actors. I kept going, as many of you probably did, because of sheer ignorance of NPD and narcissistic relationships, and because I thought that is what love would do. You're not awakened to the darker side of life, and you wear a veil that covers your eyes. The narcissist gets into your brain like a parasite and starts controlling your nervous system. They brainwash and entrain you. And it's like being under a hypnosis. It's someone that's really got inside of you. They're really parasiting. And it's that level of scary. The only way that I found was effective for getting any kind of clarity was to get physically and energetically away from them. But that's also really difficult. Now, you got to take yourself away and not talk to them for at least 1 month to allow yourself to get some mental clearing and to connect with your energy again. Now, I did that and I got a lot of clarity, and then I made the choice of returning to relationship. And that then was my conscious choice, because I still held out for hope of love until the very end. And it wasn't until I saw how fast the narcissist could turn on me when they didn't get their own way and move on to somebody else, did I get the shock of my life that I needed to see. Then I realized there was no love. It was all about if you're useful to them or not. And that was what forced me to wake up. Previously, although I had the awareness that, I was not in a healthy situation for my own well-being and I should leave, I was entrapped on many levels, including the financial. And I was carrying a lot of emotional guilt and shame and toxic hope and blind love that was preventing me from pulling the plug on the relationship. I was going to see it through to the bitter end. Now, if I could have walked sooner without the narcissist unmasking and making it crystal clear who they were, then I probably would have been left wondering for many years afterwards if the failure of the relationship was my fault, or if in other circumstances it could have worked out. So it's a lesson. It's a big lesson. It's a learning experience. I don't think that we can blame ourselves for what we did or what we didn't do back then. The way that we can actually move forward is by knowing that these sick and horrible low lives, these narcissists and narcopaths, they exist. And never ever again to live in hope or blind love when all the signs are pointing towards abuse and a toxic person. And we need to work actively on enhancing our self-esteem and our connection with ourselves, building that up, so that we will be far less reliant upon external sources of validation and more likely to slam the brakes on toxic people that come towards us. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this highly nuanced subject. So please do use the comment section below and let me know what you think. It's definitely not an easy question to answer. We were all victimized, but it's very healthy to analyze the ways in which we have responsibility for our own well-being and what we can do differently in the future to prevent such a situation from occurring. Now, I just want to say that YouTube has alerted me that not many of my subscribers have hit the bell icon. And if you hit the bell icon, then you're going to be notified every time I post a new video, so you won't miss anything. So please do go ahead and hit that bell icon. If you haven't subscribed, then please do subscribe and hit the bell. And do remember, I bring out a new video every single Wednesday, so I hope to see you again soon. And if you haven't seen my comedy, then this is a channel that also uses comedy skits to raise awareness about narcissistic abuse. So I'm going to add some links below and at the end of this video coming up. So thank you all so much for watching. Take care, sending love, and I'll see you again next week.